The Maurya Empire, which existed from about 321 to 185 BC, is regarded as the first truly centralized state in Indian history and one of the largest empires of the ancient world by territory. Its domains encompass nearly the entire Indian subcontinent, with the exception of its southernmost tip. The significance of the Mauryas lies not only in their political unification of previously fragmented principalities, but also in their creation of advanced models of governance for the time, the flourishing of trade and cultural exchange, and the wide dissemination of Buddhism, which had a lasting impact on world history. By the time the empire rose, the political landscape of northern India was a mosaic of many Mahajanapadas, urban and tribal states competing for resources and trade routes. One of the centers of power in India was the kingdom of Magadha, located in the lower Ganges basin and ruled by the Nanda dynasty. It stood out for its large population, agricultural potential, and advantageous control over river transport. A major external challenge for the Indian states came with the invasion of Alexander the Great's army in 326 BC. Although his campaign did not lead to lasting Greek domination over Indian lands, it vividly exposed the military weakness of the fragmented kingdoms when faced with a well-organized foreign force. After Alexander's withdrawal, Hellenistic states arose in the northwestern part of the subcontinent, notably the Greco-Bactrian kingdom, which continued to pose a potential threat to Indian territories. This spurred the local elites to seek ways of consolidating their power. At the same time, trade and crafts were flourishing, cities were expanding rapidly, and the merchant classes were growing stronger and wealthier. These new economic elites had a vested interest in stability, the security of trade routes, and a unified system of law, all of which could be guaranteed only by a strong, centralized state. Thus, by the end of the 4th century BC, all the conditions were in place in India for the rise of a new unifying force. The key figure in this process was Chandragupta Maurya, a young ruler who combined military strength and political acumen with the guidance of a gifted advisor, laying the foundation for the First Indian Empire.
Honor the legacy of empires, subscribe, and let greatness endure.
Little is known about Chandragupta's origins, but ancient sources, most notably Justin and Plutarch, describe him as a young man of humble birth, not descended from any noble dynasty. According to Indian tradition, he was raised among warriors. His fateful encounter with the sage and strategist Kautilya, also known as Chanakya, determined the course of his life. Kautilya recognized in the young Chandragupta the potential for greatness and became his mentor. Chandragupta's rise to power began with the creation of his own base of support. He was likely connected with the tribal confederations of the northwestern regions, where a political vacuum had formed after the withdrawal of Alexander the Great's forces. There he secured the backing of local chieftains and assembled troops made up of tribal warriors, allied community forces, and deserters from Macedonian garrisons. Later traditions also mention his time in Taxila, an important center of learning and politics, where Chandragupta may have acquired his first skills in governance. It was during this period that he emerged as a leader and organizer, able to unite scattered forces under his authority. With Kautilya's support, he began preparing for the decisive confrontation with the Nandas, who ruled in Magadha. The Nandas were wealthy and commanded a powerful army, but their rule was unpopular among both the nobility and the common people. The first military clashes with the Nanda forces took the form of protracted sieges and maneuvering battles. The Nanda army, far superior in numbers to Chandragupta's troops, possessed war chariots and elephants, making it a formidable force. However, following Kautilya's counsel, Chandragupta avoided direct engagements, preferring tactics of sudden strikes and rapid withdrawals. He weakened the enemy through guerrilla actions, cut their supply lines, and gradually won over local rulers dissatisfied with Nanda authority. These tactical moves allowed him to level the odds and prepare the ground for a decisive offensive. Around 322 BC, Chandragupta succeeded in overthrowing the Nandas and ascended the throne of Magadha. After consolidating his power in Pataliputra, he began a systematic expansion of his realm, gradually bringing under his control the entire Ganges Valley, the most fertile and densely populated region of India. His ambitions soon brought him into conflict with Seleucus I Nicator, one of the Diadochi and successors of Alexander the Great, who sought to reclaim the Indian territories conquered by the Greeks. After a series of military clashes, the two sides concluded a peace treaty. According to its terms, Seleucus ceded to Chandragupta vast lands west of the Indus in exchange for 500 war elephants. It is likely that the alliance was further sealed by a dynastic marriage, which finally secured for the Mauryan Empire the status of a great power equal to the Hellenistic kingdoms. After defeating the Nandas and concluding a favorable peace with the Seleucids, Chandragupta Maurya was able to focus on the internal organization of his vast empire. The capital, Pataliputra, became one of the largest cities in the world, serving not only as an administrative center, but also as an important hub of culture and commerce. The treatise Arthashastra is attributed to Kautilya. It covers a wide range of subjects concerning law, economics, warfare, and diplomacy. Although the version that has come down to us was altered and supplemented over time, it can be stated with confidence that it rests on an ancient foundation and that some of Kautilya's ideas genuinely shaped Mauryan practice. Under Kautilya's guidance, a powerful and intricate bureaucratic system was established. The empire was divided into provinces governed by viceroys, often chosen from among the members of the royal family. A complex taxation system was introduced, encompassing agriculture, trade, and crafts. The revenues supported the maintenance of a vast army and a large administrative apparatus. According to ancient sources, the Mauryan army was one of the largest in the world, numbering hundreds of thousands of infantrymen, tens of thousands of cavalry, and thousands of war elephants, though this was perhaps a typical exaggeration by historians of the time. Such military might made it possible both to expand the empire's frontiers and to maintain order in the conquered territories. A far-reaching network of spies was also created, reporting back to the capital on the mood in the provinces and on the conduct of officials, an arrangement that helped prevent conspiracies and uprisings. During the reigns of Chandragupta and his son Bindusara, the empire extended its power over nearly all of northern, central, and part of southern India, laying the firm foundations of centralized governance that would later be inherited by their successor. The Maurya Empire reached the height of its power under Ashoka, the grandson of Chandragupta, who ascended the throne around 268 BC. He inherited a vast and stable realm and, in the early years of his reign, continued the expansionist policies of his predecessors. The decisive event in his life and in the history of the empire was the war with the kingdom of Kalinga on the eastern coast of India. It was a wealthy and independent state, control over which provided access to maritime trade routes. The war proved to be extraordinarily bloody. Though Ashoka won a complete victory, the horrors of battle, the mass loss of life, and the suffering of civilians, by his own admission, led him into a profound moral crisis. This event became a turning point in his worldview. Soon after the war, Ashoka embraced Buddhism and proclaimed a policy founded on the principles of nonviolence and adherence to the law of righteousness. He renounced further conquests and devoted himself to the peaceful governance of his empire. Under his patronage, Buddhism evolved from a regional teaching into a world religion. Ashoka sent missionaries to neighboring lands, including Sri Lanka, the states of Southeast Asia, and the Hellenistic world in the West. It was thanks to Ashoka's support that the doctrine spread beyond India's borders and in time became one of the world's great religions, exerting a profound influence on the civilizations of Asia. Throughout the empire, he initiated the construction of numerous stupas, monasteries, and hospitals. His edicts, inscriptions carved on rocks and pillars, became particularly renowned as they set forth the principles of his new policy. These texts, a unique example of ancient state propaganda, called for tolerance, compassion, respect for elders, and care for all living beings. The age of Ashoka became a time of cultural flourishing and relative peace, rightly regarded as the golden age of the empire. After Ashoka's death in 232 BC, the empire entered a slow but steady decline. None of his successors possessed his authority or political will. Central power began to weaken, and separatist tendencies grew stronger in distant regions. Provincial governors, who under strong rulers had been obedient executors of the central will, now began to act as independent kings. Frequent changes of rulers, court intrigues, and conspiracies further undermined the ruling dynasty. The vast empire, which required the coordinated functioning of a complex bureaucracy, began to fragment. External pressure was also mounting. The Greco-Bactrian kings in the northwest took advantage of the Mauryan weakening and launched raids into Indian territories, eventually seizing considerable lands. Economic difficulties likely played a role as well. Maintaining a vast army and bureaucracy demanded enormous resources, and as central control weakened, tax collection probably became less and less effective. Some historians suggest that Ashoka's policy of peace may have led to a decline in the army's combat readiness, leaving it unprepared for new challenges. In any case, the combination of internal and external factors caused the once powerful empire to rapidly lose its unity and influence. The last ruler of the Maurya dynasty was Brihadratha. By the time of his reign, the empire was already a shadow of its former greatness, controlling only the central part of its once vast territories. Around 185 BC, during a military parade, Brihadratha was killed by his chief commander, Pushyamitra Shunga. This coup ended the rule of the Maurya dynasty, which had lasted nearly 140 years. Pushyamitra founded a new dynasty, the Shungas, but it failed to restore India's unity. The Maurya Empire finally disintegrated. On its ruins arose numerous new states, both Indian and Greek. Control over key trade routes was lost, and the idea of a unified, centralized power disappeared from the Indian political landscape for a long time. The first attempt in history to unite India had come to an end, but it left behind a lasting and multifaceted legacy that shaped the region's further development.
Join our journey for wisdom and peace. Subscribe now and help spread our message.